Big story over the weekend. It's the Friday. The president, in the wake of not particularly liking the job numbers, decided to do something about it, and he fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, causing a fair amount of upset. Even, as they say, even Joe Kernan, when you've lost Joe Kernan. Here's Joe Kernan's mild upset this morning at what happened on Squawk Box 104.
I think it was suboptimal. I use that word a lot. Suboptimal, petulant, but I didn't spend, much time obsessing over the weekend about the end of democracy. I think we're okay. I will say.
Speaking of suboptimal and petulant, as Rachel Maddow would say, here's the president's analysis of the firing, 103.
Okay, thank you very much. We had a very good weekend in many respects. We're seeing phenomenal numbers in terms of the business we do with other countries and the business we do within our own country. I mean, really phenomenal numbers. We'll be announcing a new statistician sometime over the next 3-4 days. We had no confidence. I mean, the numbers were ridiculous, what she announced, but that was just one negative number. All of the numbers seem to be great. And so we'll see how that comes out. And if you remember, just before the election, this woman came out with these phenomenal numbers on Biden's economy. Phenomenal numbers. And then right after the election, they announced that those numbers were wrong. And that's what they did the other day. So it's a scam, in my opinion. My opinion is it's just additional scam.
On Russia, Mr.
About an hour ago, Kevin Hassett, the head of the National Economic Council, went on CNBC and semi-defended the president's decision to sack the BLS topper.
The president said on Friday that he believed that these numbers were rigged, that they were politically motivated. Do you believe that to be true?
As an economist, I like to go for what I can prove, and what I can prove is that the data have become very unreliable. As you know, I've been on this show on Squawk Box before I was here at the White House pretty much every jobs day for the last 20, 25 years, right? We would come up to New York and I'd be on set and we'd talk about the jobs numbers. And when I looked at the revisions that came out last week, I thought they had to be a typo or something. You probably thought so too. And it's something that has been a work in progress for us at OMB and CEA here at the White House to try to understand why the data have become so unreliable. There's some part of the story about response rates and so on, but I think it's really important now that we get a fresh set of eyes over there to try to modernize the labor data, because it has to be transparent, it has to be reliable, it has to be something the market can make big bets on. And right now it's not. When the revisions are bigger than the number itself, then you got troubles.
So as I read Kevin Hassett, he's saying it's about competence, not ideology, that Donald Trump didn't fire this lady because she doesn't know because she's got an agenda that's hostile, but because she's not doing a good job. Most of the reports of how BLS operates suggest that she really has nothing to do with actually producing the data. Sean, what happens next on this story?
Well, I guess it depends on who they name. I think, let me go back a second. I think, as we talked about extensively, the way in which they set the predicate for the potential firing of Howell, whether or not you agree with it or not, the idea was to basically satisfy the threshold of did you have cause or not. And again, as you can, it's not a question of is he responsible for the overruns or not, whatever. But the bottom line is that the way the court would view it is that does that constitute cause? And the reason I bring this up is what was different about this was they didn't go out and, in my opinion, set the predicate, right? So I believe, as a non-economist, as someone who just looks at the numbers and whatever, I find the wild fluctuations intriguing. Maybe that's normal, maybe it's not. But I think that if they had gone back and explained, like, look at these wild fluctuations, and they didn't meet, there's criticism from economic institutions and key folks about what they're doing, then you could have said she didn't deserve the job. And so how they handle the replacement, I think, is going to be important, because I think it's one thing to fire someone because you don't like what they're telling you. It's another thing if they're incompetent or they're not doing their job. And that's why how they explain this will determine the answer to your question. If they just put a new person in or a loyalist that is not seen as qualified for the job, I think you're going to have a longer story this week than if they appointed somebody who might be more of a career type, but they feel confident in, et cetera. So, I mean, the bottom line, the answer to your question is it depends on how they handle the replacement.
If they handle it poorly, do you think we'll hear from more Republicans on the Hill publicly that they're upset? We heard from some.
I think you might find a couple like, the Don Bacons in Nebraska that are retiring and haven't been afraid to speak out. But most Republicans, as you saw there with Joe Kernan, it's like, okay, like this isn't. So I don't think you're going to see a ton of outcry unless he appoints like someone like me, who got a D in economics and is pretty clear. Like if he's did some like right field choice that had no economic background, I think he would get some eyebrows raised. But barring that, no.
And the kind of catchphrase from the Blues on this is from the quote unquote authoritarian playbook. This has really struck a chord. This is like, back to like impeachment and like, violation of norms and constitutional crisis and undermining the credibility of the United States. Where are you in your own view of how bad this is, and where do you think this is headed next?
No, I think it's idiotic. And I think Sean actually kind of made a point that I think if we look forward is what to watch. The business community was kind of horrified because they know it's nonsense. They know that it was just like dumb being dumber. And so I think they are quietly reaching out to the White House to say, don't be dumb here. We don't want to become China with fake statistics because we all plan and make decisions based on the data. So the data has been showing the economy has been softening in some areas. Okay. Trump had no problem with revisions in the past. He had no problems with the positive numbers earlier in his term. So, look, he was, as Joe Kernan said, it's petulance. He's just a child. He didn't like it. He wanted to redirect. He wants to blame somebody. But we played a clip, or we may be playing it soon, of Kevin Hassett, who kind of let the cat out of the bag when he says, if you look back at the last 3 months, there is a softening. That's how people look at it. You don't live and die in one jobs report. You look at trend lines. Trend lines are not good. And it's a problem.
So let's talk about that.
By the way, Mark, one quick thing in the way you frame that question that is a tell. The Democrats have started to call everything over the weekend in various different things. They're back to an attack on democracy. Everything is outrageous. And the thing to me that's interesting for Democrats is that if everything continues to be the most outrageous, then nothing is. And they've Republicans back in the day, we called every candidate that ran dangerously liberal to the point where it lost its sting, right? It was sort of people had started to hear the term, and Democrats better be careful. Not that they care what I think, but the more you sanitize people to everything is a challenge to democracy and the end of the republic, to me is going to create a bigger problem because then nothing is, and it doesn't have that same challenge. And so they keep throwing around the phrase over and over again. And I just think that as we go forward, they're undermining their own future arguments.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip. And you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.